Good morning. Hi, Joan.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very good. Good to be here with you.
Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you. Hi, Gail. I see that you're going to turn your video on soon.
I tried to, and it wouldn't let me.
Oh, that's shocking. Let's see if I can help. I'm going to click Ask to Start Video. Let's see if that helps.
Okay. There, now.
There we are. Hi, Gail. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine.
Good. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you both so much. How did you celebrate this holiday weekend? What did you do? Tell me.
Oh, I did it with FaceTime with my son in Boston, whose family had a new puppy.
Puppy!
A puppy, and with my daughter here, and we did FaceTime. We did dinner on FaceTime.
Oh, that's delightful. I'm so glad that worked. How about you, Joan?
Yes, I was here with my daughter and her husband, where I've been staying because I'm recovering from a broken foot.
Oh, dear.
So the three of us had dinner together, and it was lovely.
Oh, well, I'm so glad that you were able to be together and that you're able to recover with them. That's a good bubble.
Yes, it is. Perfect.
How's your foot?
It's actually getting better. I learned yesterday that I'll actually be able to walk in the boot now. Before, I was only on crutches for 6 weeks.
Okay.
So
you're
I'm
moving up to the boot.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. I see folks are checking in and saying good morning. Thank you for doing that. Yes, please use the chat to say where you're coming in from. And Cindy is sending condolences about your foot, Joan.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really good to be together, and it's really fun to watch the numbers go up and up and up and up as we're hosting here. So we're just gonna be here for a couple more minutes, and it's really helpful for folks to see your faces and know who you are, because it makes it more comfortable when you need support and when you want to reach out to a care companion to actually know who you're reaching out to. So we try when we can to invite you on in this welcoming time, and I'm really grateful that you two are here. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I really like your new name, Care Companions. Do you like it?
Yes.
What do you like best about that? What does that shift mean to you?
Well, go ahead, Gail.
The companion thing is what we do. So, and caring is what we do. So it seems like a pretty accurate description.
More accurate. Okay, that's great. That's great. Joan, what would you add?
It's about caring, which I think is a characteristic of our church community, and to be a companion. So hopefully we're all like that with each other, and this is just a special way of acknowledging that.
Right. And also I think it's good for folks to know that you have support and training in your care companionship. So that's good, because it takes a certain level of skill to listen and to be with folks when folks are sharing difficult moments. And so I really appreciate that you take the time to offer this as part of your ministry here at First U.
Yeah, that's what the training is. It's about connecting and listening.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think we're going to get started. So John is going to take you back to participants so you can turn your videos off. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you are here. My name is Julica Hartman de la Fuente. I'm the Director of Anti-Racism and Anti-Oppression Ministries here at First Universalist. And whether you are here with us live today or streaming anywhere in from around the world or watching this later on YouTube, we're glad you're here. Welcome. And as folks have been doing already, if you are here live, please do share where you're coming in from, and make sure that you set your message to panelists and attendees so everyone can see that you're saying good morning. And if you're having trouble hearing us or having trouble with the service, please let us know in the chat box, just to panelists, and John and I will do our best to support you. Here at First Universalist, we are the people who welcome, affirm, and protect the light in each human heart. We listen deeply to where love is calling us next, and with humility, courage, and compassion, we act to create a more just world. We do all of this as a faith community committed to racial justice. This is the life we invite you into when you journey with us. And this is the spirit alive in our worship today. It's so good to be together today. I know that we have all been making adjustments and accommodations because of the pandemic, and that many of us were not able to travel or be with family members during this this past weekend, and that's hard. So it's good that we're here together to remind ourselves that we're not alone and that we share our joys and struggles in community. Last week, we debuted a new feature, our virtual order of service, and I'm going to ask John to share that in the chat right now. There's a link. This will help you follow along. Thank you, John. This will help you follow along with our service. And it also has some links and information for those of you pre-registered in small groups or want to connect with Gail and Joan this morning as care companions. So please do use that link to access the information, which will also be available on our website and in the closing slide this morning. We do know that sometimes Sunday services evoke a strong emotional response, and that is why we ask care companions to make themselves available. So as Joan and Gail were explaining, they have been trained to listen and to support you, and they are happy to meet with you in a private space. You will find a link in our closing slide, on our website, and in our virtual order of service on how to connect if something gets stirred up for you. Gail and Joan are here for you today, and Gail and Joan, I really appreciate you. Thank you for doing that. So today, we are rebroadcasting a service that was offered by the UUA last week called Thanksgiving Reframed. I was really grateful, and I learned so much when I watched this service last week as I was deciding how to frame a conversation around Thanksgiving that helps us understand the parts that we are responsible for as we try to take more responsibility in a racial justice sense for our heritage and for the way that we engage in this conversation. So what I really love about this service is that it centers Indigenous voices and that it really helps us understand how we in particular as Unitarian Universalists have been a part of the mythology of the original Thanksgiving gathering. And I think it's really valuable for us to know this. I learned a lot. I hope that you do too. And I want to acknowledge that this is going to be different because we're just going to play the whole service. I will be here monitoring the chat and watching along with you, but we're not going to have our traditional joys and sorrows. We're not going to have our traditional liturgy. I know that many of us take comfort in doing similar things every week because it brings us back and it grounds us. I will be offering a moment of prayer and connection at the beginning of the fellowship hour before we break out into small groups. And we will be able to connect in our First Universalist community there on Zoom. But I do think that this is valuable. It's valuable for us to stretch ourselves, to go past our comfort zone and to do something new, especially when that new thing is going to teach us something valuable. So I hope that in that spirit of wanting to learn something new and engage, you find something valuable. And I look forward to speaking with you in the fellowship hour about what struck you and what was powerful for you about this worship service. So I'm going to invite us to take a couple deep breaths, settle into our bodies. If it's comfortable for you, I invite you to sigh on the exhale. And one more time. All right, let us begin. Thank you, John.
feels lovely and it's priceless. It makes me feel like I'm back with the trees where we're supposed to be. You can't get better than that.
Got the children off at a very young age. The Indian way, the way we teach our children, the way they learn, the way we pass on our culture, our traditions, it's handed down through oral history and also by demonstration. Our children are little mimics and they mimic everything that we do. So when we come out in a circle and we do these dances, we do them as a family.
There's no place in the world like getting back to your homeland. Sometimes you just can't find words for it, because that's how powerful the feeling is.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Welcome. We acknowledge the Wampanoag, the people of the first light, as the custodians of the traditional lands invaded by the English settlers traveling on the Mayflower, who came ashore on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, 400 years ago this month. The Wampanoag have inhabited southeastern Massachusetts and eastern Rhode Island for more than 12,000 years. Despite plagues, violent conquest, enslavement, and dispossession, the Wampanoag are still here, living on only a tiny fraction of their original homeland. The same is true of their traditional neighbors. To the north, the Massachusetts; to the west, the Nipmuc; to the south, the Narragansett, the Pequot, and the Mohegan. We acknowledge that across the United States, we are all living on indigenous lands. These lands were stolen from millions of indigenous people, initially through violent conquest and forcible removal, and later through broken treaties, congressional legislation, and court orders. This theft continues in the 21st century. Millions of indigenous people and hundreds of indigenous nations are still here, and their lands are still occupied. It is not enough to simply acknowledge the indigenous peoples whose lands we occupy. Our faith calls us, through our shared principles, to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence. We must not only reckon with our collective past, but move forward in right relationship with our indigenous siblings, who have a historical, cultural, and spiritual connection with the land. We aspire to find ways to help restore to them what is rightfully theirs. Together with them and with their leadership, we must care for the land we live upon and for our living earth, to whom we all belong. This relationship between the land and the people is beautifully expressed by Mashpee Wampanoag leader and ancestor Russell Peters Sr. We are the four directions. We are the east, west, north, and south. We are Punkhorn Point, Papaneset Bay. We are the Mashpee River. We are the flume that separates the pond from the ocean. We are the herring and the scup, and the venison and the rabbit. We are the scrub pine and the scrub oak. We are the protectors of the land. We are the Mashpee Wampanoag. It is my great joy to introduce my grandson, Hartman Dietz, a Mashpee Wampanoag artist, educator, and activist. Hartman is a member of the Wampanoag Nation Singers and Dancers. His current project is the creation of a wampum belt to represent the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. For our chalice lighting, Hartman will be offering a prayer for every time in the Wampanoag language with an English translation.
Good morning, and thank you all for having me. Pion Tamuan Kwachi Asi Kwapkish, a prayer for every time. Mana Ka Nikanahachik, creator and the ancestors. Katapatanamu Wachi Wami Chakwasanish, thank you for all things. Katapatanamu Wachi Kisak, thank you for this day. Katapatanamu Wachi Anakwasak, thank you for the stars. Katapatanamu Wachi Aki, thank you for the land. Katapatanamu Wachi Sipawash, thank you for the rivers. Katapatanamu Wachi Katahanash, thank you for the oceans. Katapatanamu Wachi Wami Awaasak, thank you for the animals. Katapatanamu Wachi Wami Natankwasak, thank you for all the relations. Ananamanyan Namana Weepy Wanikuk, help me to see only what is good. Ananamanyan Asinat Weepy Sampwak, help me to do only what is right. So that is our prayer for every time. It's something that we could be universally applied. So, be thankful for what we have, thankful for the gifts we're given. And we say to that, Anach. That's right. So I'm going to share a song with you all as well, in consideration that we're reflecting on Thanksgiving and being thankful for what we've been gifted with and what we've been given. It's something that we feel as Wampanoag people should be done more than just once a year. But this American tradition has created a mythology around this event that happens in November. We as Wampanoag people had 13 Thanksgivings, one for every cycle of the moon. So being thankful is something that we feel is something good. But there's a lot of mythology around this. The Turkey Day, they call it. But if you look at the actual history, the historic record, the people account that they went fowling. And fowling is when you go out into the swamps and you get the water birds. If they were going into the woods to get turkey, they would have gone hunting. So more likely than not, on that 1621 harvest feast, they probably didn't have turkey on the table. They probably had duck. So it's our tradition is to honor those animals that feed us and sustain us and give thanks for the lives that they give to continue ours. And one of the ways that we do that is through song and through dance. So this is the duck dance song, and you won't get the dance because I can only sing or dance. I can't do both, but here's the duck dance song. Yahweh, 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 Hoyane, Hoya, Hoyane, Hoya, Hoya, we, we oh, we oh, hey, Ogana, Ogana, yeah, we oh, hey, Ogana, Ogana, yeah. Yahweh, 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 Hoya, ne, hoya, hoya, we, oh, we, oh, Ogana, Ogana, Yahweh, we, oh, That's the duck dance, and thanks for inviting me to share with y'all. There is no translation any more than there is translation to do re mi fa sol la ti. It's just a rhythm and something that a song that has no words but is created to honor the duck. The beat changes to represent the flapping of the wings when they lift off the water, and that's as simple as that. So thanks again for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Hartman. I could envision them flying across the marsh. And now for our call to worship for today. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to examine the Thanksgiving myth. The white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Congregationalists, who feature as the protagonists in the first Thanksgiving, are our theological ancestors. We are called to know our history. The first Thanksgiving was a celebration of white supremacy over what was termed the ravages of the savages. We cannot dismantle white supremacy in our faith without learning the full history of what happened between the Mayflower settlers and the Wampanoag. We cannot dismantle white supremacy in our faith without questioning the theology that guided our ancestors and still shapes the way we behave in the world today. We cannot dismantle white supremacy without doing what the Bible forbade us to do, namely to learn from our Indigenous relatives and to give thanks for the interdependence. So let's know that we are all swept here on the river of history. The river is shaped by the religious principles our ancestors once espoused. Today, we worship in ways that our Mayflower ancestors might not recognize, but we remember the principle of supremacy in our bodies. The familiar implications of their beliefs sweep us forward unconsciously, and the pull of this cultural current is strong. A divinely justified entitlement created and still sustains a sea of injustice. So let us share a prayer and share a breath of meditation before we begin. Mindful of our espoused principles, let us find a way to embody them more fully, to discard habits of mind that do not serve justice, and let us open our hearts to learn from our Indigenous relatives with respect for self and other and the earth, our mother. Let us find a way to give thanks for the interdependent web of all existence. Aloha.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we cry. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
So I guess we're here to reflect on Thanksgiving, the United States holiday of Thanksgiving, as it's celebrated here. As I had said earlier, for Wampanoag people, we have 13 Thanksgivings a year. So there's, this idea that when friction comes up, or when something becomes a point of contention, oftentimes it's squished down and made two-dimensional. The idea that we think that Thanksgiving is somehow not okay, and it's not exactly the truth. For us, we feel that the world should be more thankful for what is given to us from this world itself. We are often thankless and treat the world as if it's supposed to give us everything without anything in return. And this is not the native way of understanding the world. We understand that the world is all living. Everything has a right to its life. Everything has a right to exist and has a right to be able to continue to exist. And we have to reciprocate. If we take something, we have to give back. And that's what giving thanks is about. So for us, each cycle of the moon, 13 times a year, we would have a Thanksgiving instead of a one in November. So we have to examine, just as the turkey is a myth and they probably ate duck, and just as this concept that what we celebrate is somehow from time immemorial or from the founding of this country, we have to examine the actual histories of these things and what they represent and what they instill in us as a culture and as a people. And it's not simply about being thankful for and grateful for what we're given. This mythology that we look at the truth of the events. There's a boatload of people from Europe that no longer wanted to live under English rule and English law, and they thought that they would be able to come and enjoy freedom by crossing an ocean. And when they got here, they wanted to impose some of the same styles of oppression, same systems of oppression onto the people who were here minding their own business. There are thousands upon thousands of people living in this land that had lives that were, you know, working on trade or bringing new life into the world. You know, people were farming, people were fishing, people were traveling up and down the coast. This was a vibrant world with an economy, with political alliances and trade networks that was just like any other part of the world. And these folks that showed up and incorporated into it were different because they intended to stay. We had seen travelers come for a long time up and down the coast, and they moved on. They traded and moved on, but these folks intended to stay. And one of the things they did was they supplanted the local law with the English law, the very law that they sought to escape. They thought to instill here. And we really have a meeting of a culture of tolerance and openness and giving on one side, and a culture of intolerance and oppression on another. And what we should be able to take away from, you know, as Nita was stating, that this thing of colonization is not simply something that happened in the past, but colonization is an ongoing process, something that continues to happen today. And you know, we as Wampanoag people are 400 years into this process of colonization, where we're often looked back and celebrated as some of the starting points of this United States American nation, and yet we aren't given the dignity of our own name, and we are still under attack, still under threat of losing our lands today as we speak. We are in court battling against Department of Interior to try to hold on to the less than 1% of our original territory that we still hold. So this is an ongoing process. It will never end until colonization is done, or until we are as the colonized done. But everything has a place in this world, as we said. Everything has a right to be in this world, and you can't continuously take without giving back, as we understood when we gave back our songs to the ducks, as we understood when we give the cornmeal to the water, when the herring come up the river, as we understand when we offer tobacco, when we cut down a tree. You have to give back to keep this balance, because balance will surely return. It's natural law and you can't fight it. You can only make it worse by preventing it and putting it off, but eventually that balance will return. And I hope that we might see a reckoning in the world today to be more thankful, to understand that this is an ongoing process of colonization that happens not only to indigenous people, but each and every one of us as human beings, as we're turned into commodities and extracted for this system of capitalism and greed and selfishness, where each one of us is supposed to be extracted for the dollar amount that they can get out of our lives instead of the happiness and joy. This myth creates a justification for white supremacy in legal terms, where Native people are not given full legal right to own and possess and have dignity and be and exist in this world. The idea that we give a meal to allow this new nation to survive, and then we are simply supposed to disappear into the ether of history and not have a present and not have a future. And this is the danger of this myth. And this is what we need to end. This idea that we are not entitled to the same human, the same earthly, the same respect and dignity of life that anything should be, given, entitled to. And that's what we need to change. We need to be more thankful. We need to give thanks on a more regular basis as human beings for the fact that we're given the things that we need to live in this life. And they come from this world. And they're given to all of us as gifts from the Creator, just like sunshine. It's not for me alone to hoard and dole out for my benefit. It's given to all of us. We have to remember that and start living by that, that all of us are entitled to a place to be in this world. So I hope that we might move forward with some of that attitude and thought in mind, that everything has a right and a place to be. And Wampanoag people, Ohlone people, Hawaiian people, Filipino people, Maasai people are no different than any other people across the world. So thank you for having me, and I'll turn it over to the next.
Thank you so much, Hartman. Friends, at this time, we will begin taking an offertory to support the Create Climate Justice Indigenous Solidarity Fund. This fund was established through the film screenings of The Condor and the Eagle that have taken place this year since March, and it is a source, a budget for Unitarian Universalist solidarity with Indigenous water protectors, land protectors, sky protectors, and all Indigenous peoples fighting for their sovereignty. The Unitarian Universalist Association is deeply encouraging our congregations to build relationships where you are with your local Native communities and supporting of Native struggles. And my sincere hope is that this fund will continue to grow and be a source to support this work throughout our association. So if you can today, please give generously to support the Create Climate Justice Indigenous Solidarity Fund. There will be a link put into the chat, and you can also go to uumfe.org/giving, and there you'll see a button with the Harvest the Power information at the very top of that page. So I want to say thank you from my heart very much for your support. And during this offertory, we will also be playing one of my favorite songs, Turn the World Around by Takaya Blaney, which is in this video performed at the Third International Rights of Nature Tribunal, which took place at the same time as the Paris Climate Accords in Paris in 2015.
Look down, you stand on common ground, drink the water, breathe the air, roots in nature we all share. Earth cries for unity in this wind of opportunity. Every step's the front line, we're showing up our battle lines. You're hiding all the danger signs. So if you wanna turn the world around, we gotta turn it upside down. Hand in hand, spring sparks, the bonfire of growing hearts. Save your false sincerities and in solidarity. Elders and children all unite to keep alive our way of life, to keep alive our way of life. We've all got to unify, we've all got to unify. Join hands for the future of our land. Speak the language of practices. Mother Earth won't heal without our bandages. Our final hour and final measure to save culture that we treasure. We wanna turn the world around. You gotta turn it upside down. Hand in hand, spring sparks, a bonfire of growing hearts. Save your false sincerities and in solidarity. Elders and children all unite to keep to keep alive our way of life. We've all got to unify. We've all got to unify. Time to take a breath and hold the government action. They have to raise our voice to speak to get a reaction. Mother Earth can't take our word, so we must be silent no more. They have to raise our voice to speak to get a reaction. Mother Earth can't take our word, so we must be silent no more. Silent no more, silent no more, silent no more. I don't know why solidarity, yeah, unity, yeah, culture, yeah, community, yeah, solidarity, yeah, unity, yeah, culture, yeah, community, yeah, solidarity, yeah, unity, yeah, culture, yeah, community, solidarity, yeah, unity, yeah, culture, yeah, community. Elders and children all unite to keep alive our way of life, to keep alive our way of life. We've all got to unify. We've all got to unify.
And now, the words of Lucille Clifton. I am accused of tending the past as if I made it, as if I sculpted it with my own hands. I did not. This past was waiting for me when I came. Like a monstrous unnamed baby. And I, with mother's itch, took it to breast and named it history. She is more human now, learning languages every day, remembering faces, dates, and names. When she is strong enough to travel on her own, beware, she will. Mahalo.
Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people. Oh yeah, rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart, can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull them back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope. Yeah, have hope. With compassion as my shield and faith down to my marrow, I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah, I resurrect. Yes, you can bet that we seen the single mama raising children on the res. We seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We seen the children take their lives when they can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. Can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war, but we've seen it all before. And now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are the ones Grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart, can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. Wake up, pueblo hermoso, levántense, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más, ahora es nuestro tiempo. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada. Traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía. A pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra, respetamos tus ancestros y la suya cultura. Hombre indígena, tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive. A pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable, yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más.
They say that history is written by the victors. But how can there be a victor when the war isn't over? The battle has only just begun, and Creator is sending his very best warriors. And this time, it isn't Indians versus cowboys. No, this time, it is all the beautiful races of humanity together on the same side, and we are fighting to replace our fear with love. And this time, bullets, arrows, and cannonballs won't save us. The only weapons that are useful in this battle are the weapons of truth, faith, and compassion.
I join you from my home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, the occupied ancestral lands of the Massachusetts people who lived here for at least 12,000 years before Europeans came. Massachusetts people still live in this area, including the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapoag. I'm Susan Frederick Gray, president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. I'm honored, humbled, and grateful to be here today and to be with this gathered company. Grateful to be gathered across the distance, together virtually, but connected by unseen threads that hold us together in creation. Honored to be a part of this justice convergence and teach-in, reframing Thanksgiving. As I begin my message, I want to acknowledge and express gratitude to the Reverend Clyde Grubbs and to Ann Gilmore for their support in researching and helping to craft this message. This truly was a joint effort. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the Day of Mourning tradition, when Frank Wamsutta James called upon hundreds of Indigenous Americans and allies to gather in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and declare Thanksgiving Day a national day of mourning for Native Americans. In 1970, the town of Plymouth sought to celebrate the 350th anniversary of the coming of the Mayflower. Officials reached out to James and asked him to speak as a Wampanoag to the gathering. James wrote his speech based on his extensive knowledge of the impact of white settlement on the original people. The organizers asked to see a copy of his remarks, and when they read what James was prepared to say, they withdrew their invitation. He did not flatter the invaders or excuse the violence with happy talk and the retelling of a fictional story of a Thanksgiving celebration. Instead, he wrote, "History wants us to believe that the Indian was a savage, illiterate, uncivilized animal. A history that was written by an organized, disciplined people to expose us as an unorganized and undisciplined entity. two distinctly different cultures met. One thought they must control life. The other believed that life was to be enjoyed because nature decreed it. James, who was of course insulted by the rejection, called for a protest, articulating that the day should be called a day of mourning for Native Americans. The demonstration garnered national attention to the growing movement of Native peoples that was making itself known across the country, with actions such as the occupation of Alcatraz, the founding of the American Indian movement, and a few years later, a march across the United States to Washington, D.C. to protest the treatment of the original people. James's censored speech ended with an acknowledgement that even after 350 years of colonization, Wampanoags and other indigenous peoples have kept their spirit and their determination to continue their identities, their communities, and their cultures. He saw that anniversary of the Pilgrims' arrival as a new beginning for the rising of the American Indian, particularly the Wampanoag, to regain the position in this country that is rightfully ours. Those were his words. The National Day of Mourning Protest in Plymouth continues to this day, now led by James's son, Mononum James, and the group that Wamsutta James founded in 1970, the United American Indians of New England. This year also marks the 400th anniversary of the landing of the Pilgrims in Plymouth, the 400th anniversary of the arrival of colonizers, which resulted in the enslavement, forced removal, and genocide of millions of indigenous people. As Unitarian Universalists, we have been examining and wrestling with this historic and theological legacy of which we are a part. Many UU congregations in New England can trace their lineage directly back to those early settler communities that had a role in the attempted genocide of Native communities. I can trace my own ancestry back to the Mayflower settlers. We must be honest that our own Unitarian Universalism has been shaped by and steeped in colonialism and the practices of domination since its beginning. Yes, there is something deeply life-giving and liberating about our theology that says we are part of one great family of all souls, that our destiny as humanity is bound together, and that no one is outside the circle of God's love. No one is outside the circle of the Creator's love of the web of life. However, we continue to fail to live into the fullness of this liberating vision. In part, this is because of the limits of our early forebears and the culture and constructs of our tradition. Our early forebears who understood their faith within the context of Christian and European supremacy. What we often describe as white supremacy as a manifestation of the Christian supremacy codified in the late 1400s by papal bull known as the Doctrine of Discovery. The Doctrine of Discovery established that any land not occupied by Christians was available to be discovered and claimed in the name of Christendom. It established that the people of these discovered lands, pagans, non-Christians, savages, as they were called, were to be enslaved and conquered. It posited that indigenous people did not have souls, were not part of the human family. It was this doctrine that formed the foundation for the European conquest of much of the globe, including Turtle Island, the Americas. It also formed the foundation of the United States legal code when it came to indigenous people and their land rights. And it continues to this day to support the ongoing theft and exploitation of indigenous land and violations of indigenous sovereignty. Early Unitarian Universalists understood themselves and their faith within this framework of Christian supremacy. So the faith that we today hold so dear, including the universalism that we so proudly proclaim, did not recognize nor include Indigenous people. Today, we still have work to do to free ourselves from the spiritual corruption of these notions of supremacy, domination, and exceptionalism. They continue to operate in our culture, in our congregations, in our own selves. These notions of supremacy, domination, exceptionalism, they feed the continuation of practices and policies that marginalize, denigrate, and exploit people and the planet and our Mother Earth. They are the foundation of the persistent dehumanizing attacks in our society against Indigenous people and against Black people, people of color, migrants and immigrants, transgender people, gay, lesbian, and bisexual people, disabled people, and women. None of us, no one is unharmed by these narratives. No one is unscathed from these systems of domination, even as the impacts are very different depending on the identities we hold. Fundamentally, these narratives have the effect of separating us from one another and from our common humanity and our interdependence. And not our interdependence, not just with one another as human beings, but our interdependence with creation and life itself. The narratives of domination, of supremacy, they separate us from the beauty, the love, and the fullness of this truth of our creation. And so our work is both to make visible these systems, make visible how they operate, and to dismantle these narratives and practices, beginning with how they live in ourselves. If we are truly to be about the work of liberation and justice, love and compassion, then this is our work. And an important piece of this work is examining and debunking the Thanksgiving myth and owning our own religious tradition's role in its creation. In David Silverman's essay, Mourning in America, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, Mourning in America, from the book This Land is Their Land, Silverman traces the history of the holiday. While the Wampanoags celebrated many seasonal Thanksgivings, as Hartman Dietz shared with us, to celebrate the earth's bounty and the Creator's many gifts, the first Thanksgivings observed by the Pilgrims and the Puritans focused on days of fasting and prayer to thank God for the plagues that had wiped out an enormous number, a huge percentage of the Indigenous population in many villages. Those early Puritans and Pilgrims created Thanksgiving celebrations following battles that wiped out populations of Indigenous people, including the Wampanoag people in Patuxent, which is now called Plymouth. Thanksgivings were also declared again and again to celebrate the slaughter of Indigenous people, such as the Pequot Massacre in 1637. It matters that we know this history. Now, eventually, colonial New Englanders began to celebrate each spring and autumn with days of Thanksgiving. These celebrations, particularly the autumn ones, eventually spread to other areas in the 1800s. None of these celebrations were associated with Pilgrims or with Indigenous people. The first time this association was made was in 1841, when New England-born Unitarian minister, the Reverend Alexander Young, published Pilgrim leader Edward Winslow's only known primary source account of the 1621 Pilgrim and Wampanoag gathering in Plymouth. So Edward Winslow's primary source account consisted of only 4 lines. However, the Reverend Young added a footnote to the paragraph stating that, quote, "This was the first Thanksgiving, the harvest festival of New England." And so the myth began. The holiday we've come to know as Thanksgiving was formally created during the Civil War in 1863 expressing gratitude for the victory of the Union Army at Gettysburg. Abraham Lincoln declared that the fourth Thursday of November should be held as a national day of thanksgiving. He believed it would foster unity amid the horrors of war. Silverman goes on to show how over time, the association of our national holiday of Thanksgiving with the 1621 friendly gathering of the Pilgrims and Wampanoags served to minimize and erase any national recognition of the centuries of violence and subjugation of Indigenous people across this continent, and minimize the long-standing history of violent enslavement and subjugation of Black people. Casting, and these are his words, the so-called Black and Indian problems as Southern and Western exceptions to an otherwise inspiring national heritage. I invite us to hear those words again, the so-called Black and Indian problems as Southern and Western exceptions to an otherwise inspiring national heritage. And to hear those as Unitarian Universalists whose faith grew in New England, separating our tradition from this history of the attempted erasure of Indigenous people and the theft of their lands. That is the culture in which our faith grew. Friends, we are in a season of turning. We are in a season of change. We are in a time marked by tremendous heartbreak and loss with this pandemic, with the conditions of our planet. And yet, I continue to be inspired by all the ways that Unitarian Universalists like you are actively showing up and willing to deeply examine the complicity of our nation's story in hiding the truth and brutality of the conquest of peoples and lands that have been the foundation of the United States history, have been a part of our own history as Unitarian Universalists, and continue to be a part of the continued perpetuation of racial and caste-like systems of hierarchy and domination. Being willing to grapple and know and name this truth and imagine a way forward separate from these narratives of domination is the path to liberation. May we keep doing this work to dismantle these myths and offer a bolder, more powerful yes, yes to the gift of life. Yes to the miracle and abundance of creation. Yes to our responsibility as siblings to the human family and as members of this creation. Yes to the larger liberating change that is possible within us and within our faith communities, and that is critical for our future. And so on this day, let us take a moment and be grateful. To be grateful in a genuine manner. Let us be grateful and let our gratitude flow from our deep and ongoing commitment to justice, to equity, and to peace. Let our gratitude grow from the beauty and the abundance of the earth and the miracle of life. Let our gratitude grow from the opportunities that we have to be together authentically, whether virtually or in person, in the fullness of our humanity. And may we continue to grow our capacity for courage and compassion, for solidarity and justice, for liberation and for humility within ourselves, within our communities, and beyond. This is the work that I give thanks for this day. May it be so, and blessed be.
One world, one peace.
I know, what I know, we are one. What I know, what I know, no, 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 we are one.
It all starts with the people. One people, we stand all together, one voice saying yes we can. Each one, reach one till we pull ourselves up, cause we all one fam. From the rest of the block to the prairie to the rock, we connect that love. Cause the people with power feel the power of the people when we stand as one.
I got you stuck off the realness. We be indigenous, you heard of us. Max Heaven, the murderer, spreading the love with the water and earth. And the stand against hate, kinda know what the purpose is. We rise, the climate is changing, signs of the times. It's time to start praying. Pray for the world and community. Prayers are more powerful when we're in unity.
What I know, we are one. What I know, what I know, no, 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 we are one.
Woke up today, hungry for a change, new path to take. Can't stay the same, it's been too long. Pointing out who's right or wrong, can you hear me out? All we need is a little bit of love. Take time to heal and it starts with us. Hand in hand, I put my trust in one world, reunite, it's a must. Hold on to hope, we can overload. We can break the code with a single note. Sing out for the world to hear that our time is now, no more for tears. I looked into my son's eyes, a new day in a new light. Lift the veil and dwell so peaceful. Come together, one world, one people.
What I know, we are one. What I know, what I know, no, 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 we are one.
It's who you are, it's who I am. We all bleed the same blood, yeah. Hey. We all bleed the same blood, yeah.
We got beautiful differences. Let me give you a peek. Over 500 tribes, but we all unique. And if we cannot compete to eat, nothing could beat us. Jealousy is more dangerous than diabetes. See this unity? Imagine what it looked like. You would think we would do whatever it took, right? I would do anything for this good life. We could do anything if we unite. Come on.
Young native, you are my savior. Say your prayer for our inspiration. From the block to your reservation. Any color, all my relations. From the basement, worldwide invasion. Every day we're painting our faces. Fighting back but learning our language. Dancing our dances, saying our prayers.
What I know, we are one. What I know, what I know, no, 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 we are one.
We only got one world. We only got one world. We only got one world. Hey.
All we got is one voice, one choice, one earth, one love, one birth, one life to live. One life to live, yeah.
One people, we stand all together, one voice saying yes we can. Each one, reach one till we pull ourselves up, cause we all one fam. From the rest of the block to the prairie to the rock, we connect that love. Cause the people with power feel the power of the people when we stand as one.
What I know, we are one. What I know, no, 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 we are one. What I know, no, 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 we are one. We are
Eagle Poem by Joy Harjo. To pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. And you know there is more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know, except in moments, steadily growing, and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky, in wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in, knowing we are made of all this, and breathe, knowing we are truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion, like eagle rounding out the morning inside us. We pray that it will be done in beauty, in beauty. May this benediction be both an ending and a beginning. I invite you now, as you leave this online space, to do so with an open heart, an open spirit, and a readiness to listen, to pray. Listen with your heart, listen with your body, listen to your spirit and your intuition. Follow it, and for a time, put away your phone, your computer, your worries, your heartache. Follow it to an open door or a comfy perch by an open window. Take this time to disconnect from the technical and industrial world and to connect with the earth, the spirits, and the oneness of all life. May this benediction be both an ending and beginning. May the spirit and the truth that has moved you during this worship service continue to be with you throughout this day and week ahead. And may it spark for you a sacred sense of synergy and flow, like a current you can float in, that you may experience the feeling of oneness with all nations and all life, that you may feel the energy of the breeze, the rain, or the snow, or the birds, the plants, the animals, the earth, the spirits, and the ancestors. In your own way, or in the cultural traditions of your people, make an offering of gratitude to the earth and to these spirits. You are part of them, and they are part of you. Go now in gentleness, in openness, in humility, in prayer.